Welcome back to Flick Favorites. I'm going to explain an action, crime, thriller film from 2018, titled, Death Wish. Spoilers ahead. Enjoy the content. The growing crime rate in Chicago is a topic on many radio stations. People are losing trust in the system as conditions worsen to levels never previously seen. A police cruiser is driving toward the hospital while its sirens are on. An cop who was shot is seriously injured. A waiting emergency crew rushes him into surgery, but his heart stops pumping and Paul, the surgeon, declares him dead. He informs the other officer that it was not his responsibility that the person died. While enjoying breakfast with his wife Lucy, Paul laments the slowness of his watch. They can hear a loud, joyful scream coming from above as they are conversing. They are pleased for Jordan when she comes down and tells them she's been admitted to college in New York City. At Jordan's soccer game, they talk about Jordan going to college, but one of the fathers, who is taking the game entirely too seriously, interrupts them. Paul kindly requests that he stop talking. He becomes a little enraged, but fortunately the argument does not get violent. Following the game, the family and Frank, Paul's brother, are having pizza in a restaurant. They raise a glass of wine in celebration as Lucy approaches the end of her PhD. When discussing the earlier close call battle, Frank reveals to Jordan that Paul used to be known for being abrasive when he was younger. Paul offers to lend Frank some money following supper. While they wait for their car to be returned, the valet, who knows they will be gone that night, takes a picture of the address on the family car's sat nav. Paul and Lucy are getting ready to celebrate Paul's birthday by going out dressed up. After finishing their preparations, they kiss, and Lucy gives Paul a watch as a birthday present. After receiving a call from the hospital, Paul is forced to report to work. Even though Lucy and Jordan are sad about having to postpone Paul's birthday dinner, they decide to do so. After spending the evening out, Lucy and Jordan return home to find a suspicious-looking vehicle parked outside. They start making Paul's birthday cake while Jordan is asked to go upstairs and retrieve Lucy's iPad from her bedroom. Jordan is on the phone with her buddy Sophie when she receives the iPad. A menacing dark creature is standing outside the kitchen window. A strange feeling strikes Lucy, and she finds the kitchen window open. When she goes to close it, the floor has muddy tracks. She calls for Jordan to come downstairs when she realizes that someone is in the home, but a robber disguised in black is waiting in the bathroom and catches Jordan as she descends. The three male thieves command Lucy to put her phone down as they approach the kitchen. While Jordan is being held at gunpoint in the kitchen, the group's commander assures them that if they comply, nothing bad would happen. Lucy is then given the order to unlock the safe. The thief forces Lucy to remove all of their possessions and place them in a bag after multiple failed attempts to unlock the safe. Jordan is being hassled by the downstairs thief. When the second robber enters the garage with a rope, they argue. Jordan sees an opening and cuts the other robber in the face, but the other robber disarms her and throws her to the ground. When Lucy and the third robber arrive, the uncovered man is attacked with a kettle of hot water that Lucy grabbed upon noticing the disturbance. Jordan is instructed to flee by the woman, but the thieves' commander has had enough and fires 2 shots from his main video pistol. Over the intercom, Paul, who is undergoing surgery, is informed of the arrival of 2 female patients. By the time he arrives, he is devastated to learn that his wife has passed away and that his daughter is undergoing extensive surgery. Kevin Raines and Leonore Jackson, the investigators, listen as Paul lists the goods taken from their house. Paul begs Frank to calm down as he yells at the police officers for not treating the recent crimes in the neighborhood more seriously. Paul is reassured by the investigators that they will find the culprit. Paul is sitting at Jordan's bedside while she recovers from surgery but is still unconscious. Ben, Lucy's father, talks at her burial and questions how this senseless killing could be a part of God's plan. Paul receives the discouraging news that there are currently no suspects while on the phone with Detective Raines while driving. He yells at a homeless guy who is attempting to wipe the glass of his car and expresses frustration with the police's general lack of action in the issue. As Paul enters his daughter's hospital room, Jordan is being read a book on economics by Jordan's friend Sophie. Paul praises her for showing up as she adds that perhaps by doing this, she won't fall behind. Later, when he attends therapy, he discusses how he can't sleep in their bed and instead chooses to do it on the sofa. He thinks back to his difficult youth, when he avoided his father by traveling trains alone. The same thing he does today is for thought only. He feels remorse for not having been able to defend his family since everything makes him think of the men who came and snatched his wife from him. He is reassured by the therapist that recovery is a process that takes time. Paul sees two men harassing a young woman while out on a nighttime stroll in the town. Despite his repeated requests for them to leave her alone, they attack him instead. He returns home and views an advertisement for a nearby gun shop. The shop worker shows him all of the various guns they have when he visits the gun store the following day. She responds to his question regarding the paperwork by telling him not to worry about it. They will assist him with the application process, all that's left is for him to pass a class on gun safety. Paul replies he'll give it some thought. A while later, Paul is at the hospital treating a different gunshot wound when the patient's pocket drops a pistol. After kicking it beneath the operating table, he picks it up. He practices shooting for the next few days while watching gun lessons. Jordan had a seizure when Paul is sent to the ICU one day. Her illness keeps becoming worse, and survival seems improbable. The fact that the culprits are still at large and his daughter is restrained to a hospital bed makes him furious. He grabs the revolver that evening and begins to stroll through a seedy part of Chicago. He witnesses two individuals attempting to steal a woman's vehicle. He challenges them, but they simply open fire. He shoots the driver as they attempt to flee, causing them to crash. The other man exits the vehicle and begins firing irrationally, but Paul outwits him and kills him. A woman who was in the window was filming everything. Paul flees the scene, drops his hoodie, and takes a train to return home. He applies a bandage on his hurt arm and goes to bed. The woman Paul saved and the person who recorded it both provide statements to detectives Rains and Jackson. Paul's face was not visible in the video, so the only thing they know is that it was a white guy in a hoodie. When Rains examines the film, he sees Paul hurting his hand because he wasn't gripping the pistol correctly. The lady is instructed to keep the footage private. I just hours ago uploaded that story. Paul gets branded the Grim Reaper by the media after he watches the footage of himself in the carjacking firefight the next morning. He hears a radio program questioning whether he is a hero or not as he travels to work. The ice cream man, a notorious neighborhood dealer and criminal, shoots a small kid. In the hospital, Paul looks through the boy's paperwork and makes a note of his address. Paul then dons a hoodie and approaches the ice cream vendor. The locals take all of his ice cream while he shoots him and dives. When the investigators arrive on the location, the witness reports seeing a white male wearing a hoodie once more. Because the Grim Reaper is left-handed, Rains surmises that some young people are playing out the events. Their commander is furious with some vigilantes for shooting criminals on the street, is concerned about others doing the same, and inquires about their progress. They clarify that so far, they are aware of his left-handedness and lack of proficiency with simple weapons. Congratulations, you've reduced the number of suspects to around 1 million. Paul discovers the valet while operating on a different gunshot victim one day. On his wrist, he also sees his old watch. Paul enters the ambulance he was transported into after the valet passes away on the operating table and snatches his phone. With the help of the valet's finger, he opens it and retrieves his watch. He searches his phone and locates the image of their address. He continues his research and comes across a photo of a booze store that is actually a cover for the sale of stolen items. He then makes the decision to go look into it. He heads to the booze shop after retrieving another sweatshirt from the hospital's laundry. He invents a lie about the valet, but when the owner sees the hospital label on his sweatshirt, he secretly texts another crook named Fish to warn him to come over. Then he goes to grab a handgun, but Paul grabs his hand and tells him to show him what he's got. Paul discovers all the goods taken from his home in the safe the owner leads him to. Fish shows there and tries to shoot Paul, but instead murders the proprietor. Paul asks him who killed Lucy while using the cameras to shoot Fish through the bar. Fish informs him that the mechanic was called Joe, and that his phone had Joe's address. Fish knocks Paul to the ground as he picks up the phone and then rises up, pointing his rifle, but a bowling ball lands on his head and kills him. Paul hastily takes the tapes, but his ring drops to the ground as he exits. Jackson and Raines pay Paul a visit the next day in the hospital. They display to him a photograph of Fish along with the ring, which Paul affirms belongs to him. Now that they are aware of one of the burglars, they assure him that the case would be solved soon. Paul visits Joe later on. He uses a wrench to knock him unconscious, and when Joe awakes, he is still tied to the car. The strongest nerve in the body is severed by Paul, who then gives him brake fluid as a prescription. Joe informs him of what he knows since he finds this to be very unpleasant. The person who murdered his wife is actually Knox. Joe is put down after Paul praises him for his cooperation. The detectives approach Frank at the batting cage because they think he might know anything about the Grim Reaper, and want to speak with him. Jordan and Paul are both at the hospital when Knox calls, and Paul is there as well. He mocks Paul by stating he wants to tell him his wife's final words and scheduling a meeting at a club for 30 minutes from now. No one answers the door when Frank rings, so he walks to Paul's house and unlocks the door. He recognizes himself as the Grim Reaper as he goes into the basement where Paul has been storing ammo. While inside the club, Paul texts Knox to let him know he's there. Knox instructs him to meet him in the restroom. When Paul opens the cubicle door and dials his mobile, he finds just a phone. From behind, Knox emerges and begins to fire. Paul blasts off the lights, climbs out, and disappears into the throng after realizing he has been surrounded. A call about the club shooting prompts the investigators to visit the hospital, where one of the wounded claims to have seen the shooter. It turns out to be Knox when they go to see him. Paul is not at his office when the detectives arrive. Frank confronts Paul when he gets home. Paul justifies his decision by saying that nobody else would have done it. The investigators interrupt their talk. Paul isn't there, Frank announces as he answers the door. They can't arrest him even though they know he is there. Jordan is awake, Paul is informed via phone from the hospital. He had to inform his daughter that her mother has passed away after rushing there. The following morning as they prepare to leave for home, Knox decides to accompany them. He strikes up a conversation with Jordan, and when they part, Knox promises to run into them again. Paul visits the firearms shop. Jordan gets ready for bed after supper, but Paul instructs her to phone 911 from beneath the stairs because he saw someone outside. Knox attempts to break in with two of his thugs, but Paul dispatches both of them with ease. When he enters the basement to investigate a disturbance, Knox shoots him in the shoulder and commands him to sit down. Knox is distracted by Jordan's shouts as she exits the stairs. Paul deals with Knox by pressing a button on his desk. When the police do come, Paul informs Raines that he sustained all of his wounds tonight, including the almost healed cut on his hand. Paul suggests that he is done acting as a vigilante after Raines asks him a few more questions. This satisfies Raines, who then absolves him. Later, Jordan's buddy Sophie is waiting for her when Paul drops her off at her college in New York City. Paul observes a guy stealing a bag off a bellhop's cart as he makes his way back to his car. He yells at him and brandishes a finger pistol. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to stay updated on future videos. Leave a like to support the channel.